Can bots help us reach net zero? And I'm going to hand over Jagjeet Sareen, partner and global climate lead at Dalberg Advisors. Jagjeet.
Okay. Thanks, Nisha. In climate change, we say we are up against time. With this smell of the yummy food, I think we are up against some other race in time as well. And we got 15 minutes to help solve the climate crisis with the help of AI. And with that, let me invite a stellar group of panelists, Dr. Gauri Singh, who is the Deputy Director General of IRENA, International Renewable Energy Agency, Mr. Uday Khemka, and Ms. Aashima Arora, partner at LocalGlobe, pardon me. Uday is the Vice Chairman of the Sun Group. He may not remember, but I've been following his work since 2008 when he led the P8, the Pension Funds 8 group, bringing institutional investors money to climate change. It's been a long journey, and you've led an incredible group of now, I think, P80 or P180, I don't know what the number is, but trillions of dollars looking to invest in climate. With that, let's focus on AI. When we step back, we see in the last decade, if not more, two aggressive trends happening. One is digitalization at all levels, and second is electrification at all levels. You know, the mantra is electrify all sectors of economy and green the electricity. Whatever is left, hydrogen and biofuel and a few other things will take care. And then we see the intersections of electrification and the digitalization. And of course, there are some basic things which are happening. And AI as a solution has been just coming up on radar over and over again. I was just flipping through a report which IRENA produced in 2019, an innovation primer, talking about the potential of AI for both the supply side, demand side, grid management, what have you, role of AI in green transition. So my first question would be to Dr. Singh, from your vantage point leading a multilateral institution, but also in your experience as a very senior bureaucrat in Government of India, as you led the green transition journey, where do you see AI helping us? Where are countries in their journey, and what is the regulatory side push we need to bring AI at its fullest potential? Over to you.
Thanks, Jagjeet. It's great to be here, although I think the 15-minute challenge is quite daunting. But I'll try and maybe take us all through some of the big trends. You're right, digitalization and electrification are two major trends that we are seeing. And I could, in fact, add decentralization as a major trend, because decentralization is what we see with large number of generators on rooftops and wind turbines all scattered. All these are actually shifting the whole focus of how the power sector used to traditionally operate. And digitalization will be a key amplifier, because when we're looking at a very complex and a data-driven power sector, it's what will convert this data into value. So it's extremely important. And I just want to take us through maybe one quick example of what we might see as we get into a more electrified world. And this electrification is happening both on the supply side but also on the demand side, because there are mega loads which till now were being powered or are still being powered by gas and fossil fuel, will start getting converted into demanding electricity. So there will be buildings that will require heating and cooling. There will be heat pumps. There will be EVs, charging stations of EVs, and many other which will come into the whole spectrum of what power sector needs to deliver, and will be both consumers and generators. So, and to add to it, you have a power system that's becoming more and more driven by variable renewable energy, which means that the intermittency has to be managed as well. So when you put all these together, you're actually looking at a very complex set of, a very complex relationship between the consumers and the producers, which the power sector has to get adjusted to and also be able to respond. And I think that's where AI comes in to play a big role. So if you're looking at also Internet of Things, which is, currently you have about 25 billion devices that are interacting, producing data. By next year, it's expected that these will be 75 billion. So you're looking at this huge expansion of data that will come in. And that, again, means that with AI and big data and also blockchains, which will all come in as enablers, while they will not, no single thing is a silver bullet, but look at it more like a toolbox with these elements that can all reinforce each other as we try and manage a very complex power system going ahead.
Thank you for giving us the macro, but also micro issues related to it. Let me come to you, Aashima. So, at Dalberg, we put social impact as the mantra, and with each data center being built, the cooling requirements could take care of the water demand of 100,000 people in the city. Everybody wants to go to Chennai and build a data center for AI capabilities and all that. And we know what happened to the water availability in Chennai. One day you switch on, no water. You invest a lot on climate tech solutions. So give us your vantage point on solutions, not just AI, but the whole set of things, set of challenges we need to solve for when we put lives and livelihoods at the center of energy transition.
That's, I think, a wonderful question. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I think majority of my life has been spent in climate tech, blockchain, and the better part of the last 2 years has been spent in AI. So having kind of seen the potential burden that a large number of technologies cause on climate and the larger energy crisis that we're all dealing with, there's a very important aspect whenever we invest at early stage, be it at a new AI company, and there's always this conversation, which is, why do you need 10 million to be spent on compute? And then there's another second layer, higher order conversation that we have about the climate burden of having that level of compute, as to why can't we sort of innovate to a point where we don't require that much compute. So just to kind of flag a few companies that I feel are kind of heading in that direction. One is this entire theme, which you also touched upon as well, which is decentralized as well as distributed compute, as well as storage. So historically, compute is not new. TCP, IP, and World Wide Web has been around for more than 30 years at this point. But compute and storage historically has always been centralized. Which is why, majority of the investors in the audience would know that AWS is the reason why Amazon stock performs well, not the Amazon.com e-commerce website. AWS does nothing but give you that kind of cloud compute that is needed for running what we know as the internet. Majority of the audience is basically looking to be Indian, not to be racist. But all of us use WhatsApp and Meta and Slack and larger, majority of even Google, majority of the sort of current big tech players use AWS in some way, shape, or form. And that historically has been centralized compute. This newer theme of decentralized compute, companies like Qubit, companies like Jensen, which are doing decentralized compute, Hyperbolic AI, which is based out of the Bay Area, they are guaranteeing 100x, minimum 100x reduction in the sort of energy requirements, and by default, increasing the energy efficiency of the different kind of hardware and software that we use today. I personally believe that there's this study that I read, which is by 2030, 3.5% of all energy in the world would be used for running different types of compute and running different components of AI and AI agents, which is, in my opinion, the next step after bots in the next 5 years. that to be kind of, to give some context, Germany takes about, I think, 3.7% energy annually globally. This is literally one of the top 10 economies of the world where AI is going to actually play that big of a role. And then, of course, be sort of, touching and interacting with definitely more number of people. But at the same time, we need to ask ourselves, what is the layer or level of innovation that is still missing to enable this number to go significantly further down? And how can we, as investors, as innovators, as advisors, as consultants, play a role in this kind of a massive shift?
Thank you very much. Now let me bring big money into the conversation, and that's where you come in, Uday. Tell us how big money institutional investors are looking at AI and all digitalization as a growth agenda to push forward with the green transition. Too many jargons in one sentence, but you're not new to big things.
Well, it's great to be here today. Given how little time we have and how wonderful those two interventions were, I feel like shutting up and listening, quite frankly. But nevertheless, Uday Khemka, I'm Managing Trustee of the Khemka Foundation. I know when we met earlier, you were pushing me on the finance agenda. I have a different agenda I want to bring to this. Very simply, on the finance agenda right now, there's massive greed in the room. That is to say, most of the finance going into this is coming from the corporate sector, from these very high valuation companies, or from sovereign governments like the UAE government and other governments. And they are just trying to create massive victories in foundation models and in the latest LLMs, taking huge amounts of compute and not caring very much about their energy signatures, which is why I loved your comment. That having been said, it's still early for, obviously the venture capital groups that are funded by the big institutions are already in this space, you know that. The valuations are crazy high. I think that's less interesting in some ways than binding together the two conversations we've already had. Because with Ms. Singh's brilliant top-down analysis, you see the demand side of what we need to deal with. And imagine a world, a matrix world, in which the old utility of the past, which had, produce 500 megawatts and send it to thousands of people, that era is ending. The utility is going to be a traffic cop, dealing with all these different decentralized generation points and utilization points. And, oh my God, it's a nightmare. Can you imagine a world in which that could conceivably exist 5 years from now, 7 years from now, without data and AI being right at the center of it? The problem is we don't have the data on the corner cases right now yet. So generative AI will be adopted very slowly by conservative utilities until all of that's thought through. Traditional AI will be used. On the low voltage side, but in the demand side, the low voltage side, people can play around with it in the home utilization, solar plus storage, and the charging. That's where it'll start on the generative. But of course, we can have a longer discussion about data. On the other side, thank God you had your intervention, because the energy, I heard 8%, not 3.5%, is this massive surge in the need for energy, just when we were damn well trying to stop the climate impact of all this energy. You've suddenly got the dark side of what's happening. And I loved your comments, because that gives me hope and some other elements we could talk about. A very simple taxonomy. We've created an organization within the foundation that's got nothing to do with finance. It's called GRAIL. It's a bit of a Western word, GRAIL, like the Holy Grail. Green AI Learning. It's a collaboration between universities all over the world and domain themes. So I visited Ms. Singh's organization recently in Abu Dhabi, Irina, to say, hey, you've got this network of 36 utilities. How can we work with all these AI startups to start to think about the challenges of the next 10 years? How do we create that collaborative framework? Similarly, we've created something called the Collective for Clean Transport, which is doing the same thing for EV, because it's one energy system that's going to emerge by the end of the decade. All the EV storage and usage, all the built environment storage and usage, all the grid, it's all one system that's data enabled. So, so those are what we might call downstream solution sets. Most of the AI scientists right now are pulled in two different directions. Either they're making tons of money doing ridiculous nonsense on retail, or they are doing upstream stuff on atmospheric science, which is very important. and monitoring methane and satellite data. Why? Because they can get the data. The data is the critical problem. So GRAIL is about downstream solution for power, for EV, and so forth, right? One other thing I'd like to add, it's not only about electrification. AI can impact climate change mitigation also in other areas, like material science.
Yes.
I was just at the University of Manchester on Friday. I spent the whole day looking at this amazing stuff. If you take an analogy from life sciences, how AI will help create new materials that decarbonize. I'm going to be quiet. That was my intervention. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Uday, with this amazing energy and set of solutions which you bring to this discussion. I think we are at time, so I'll take a pause unless people tell me we have a few more minutes for questions. Do we? Okay. So time for 2 questions max. There.
Thank you. Yeah, just inspired by what you were saying about the traffic cop analogy, with this huge network being, hopefully managed by AI, and obviously data centers is the other classic one. I just wondered, is there any kind of relation to carbon markets in the sense that they sound like something that's very information heavy, and the only thing I can think of is like satellites checking if a forest is cut down or not. But are there roles for AI that are being investigated, or anything interesting that you can share?
Yeah, happy to kind of flag a couple of things. I think in general, as we kind of see the further level of innovation that's happening at a fundamental technological, be it foundational models, be it at the middleware infrastructure level, we are seeing more and more of different kind of carbon markets emerge. So just to give you an example, there's this one company called Reflect Orbital based out of Los Angeles that is now creating this very thin filament mirrors attached to the solar panels on a satellite that go up in the atmosphere. Now, they are creating this kind of angular capture of sunlight in such a way that the efficiency of the solar panel attached to the satellite is significantly higher. So to throw some numbers at you, currently, like an average satellite, the way it's kind of constructed, about 5 to 7% of the solar panel is able to kind of live up to its full potential, given the kind of, sort of there's like night and day, et cetera, and the location of the satellite in the atmosphere. With this company and with the kind of mirror that they're attaching, which is actually just like a thin filament mirror, it's not really a mirror, they are able to increase this number to 82%. Now, this will create different kinds of sort of carbon capture and like energy efficiency markets that will not just be for corporates, but it'll also kind of have a very big bearing on the financial markets. Another company that I can think of that can potentially impact the space is this company's new patent that came out recently, I think less than 4 days ago, actually. It's called Final Spark. I'm hoping I'm remembering the name of the company correctly. They are based out of Switzerland. They have created like a supercomputer. It's literally a biocomputer where they have synthesized lab-grown brains, and 16 of them have been put together to create a supercomputer. Now, this level of sort of supercomputing is, again, extremely useful for the kind of compute and foundational model that will be run, and again, reducing the kind of burden that it will actually have on the energy crisis that we have, and by default, create different kinds of carbon capture markets.
Wow, I was just counting the number of supercomputers in your intervention at the last row. Go ahead. You want to say something?
Well, just briefly, MRV, obviously, there's huge amounts on data capture and analysis, and that's spreading very rapidly, and you should assume that, and that's critical for the quality of carbon credits. So just take that as intrinsic. It's happening, it's spreading it fast. Is it just Pavan Sukhdev's company? I forget, someone here might know. Anyway, there are companies now working hard on data and AI to improve the quality and accountability and reporting of carbon credits into the market. Now, we normally think of that in terms of avoided emissions, but I would say all of what I've said also applies to the more expensive, higher quality carbon dioxide removal, CDR type application sets for carbon markets as well. So watch this space. I think huge amounts is happening.
Well said, Uday. Watch this space. And we haven't yet started on the resilience and adaptation AI. That's another huge opportunity for addressing the climate crisis. With that, let's give it a round of applause for the stellar panelists. And to you all for being a lovely audience. Thank you very much.